All right, hey everyone, I'm David Room. Today we're doing something fun and a little different. I know it's dangerous to start random side projects, but I think I've come up with something that is going to be fun, a nice little break from what I'm working on, and maybe something that is useful to people watching and should be fun to get into. So I'm just going to quick share the link on Twitter now that we're live, and then we will get started. Um, let's see here. So, just gonna add this to the original post, and then we'll also say, now come hang out. And all right. Cool. So, yeah, so a little bit of background on this. So, a few days ago, and then I started, and then this weekend I finished listening to um, the gaming historian documentary on the Oregon Trail, and it was actually really interesting. So I know the Oregon Trail game is something that a lot of people, especially people my age who were born in the 80s or early 90s, remember. And I also, yeah, me and many of my friends played the game growing up. But it was interesting watching this documentary. One thing I didn't know is that how early the first Oregon Trail game was developed. So the initial game was sort of like a more text-based game that was developed in the early 70s. And the version that I played, that I grew up playing, was the 1991 MS-DOS version. Um, so the basically it was originally released um, for Apple II, and this is very iconic graphics. The DOS version kind of had graphics based on these, and it was something that was a lot of fun. And I think watching the documentary, I kind of put together that this game is a very minimal sort of graphical wrapper around that text based style of game. And I kind of remembered listening to this documentary that when I was first learning how to program, I used to make little games like this. And specifically, I made a game in this kind of survival, like you're trying to travel uh, style. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So, when I was first learning how to program, I programmed in Quick Basic. But a big inspiration for me to try to get into programming were some books that belonged to my dad that had these listings of games from creative computing. I also had some old 321 Contact magazines that had basic games in them. And there's this one that I thought was really cool called Camel. It's just a very simple game. It's described as you're trying to travel 200 miles across the Great Gobi Desert, and then there's different like natural disasters or enemies that you run into, and you have to refill your water so you don't get dehydrated. And it's pretty simple game. The listing fits just on one page here, and it's mostly random events, but then you have choices that you can make. So very similar to Oregon Trail. You can drink from your canteen, ahead moderate speed, ahead full speed, stop, status check, etc. So it's the same. It's that same kind of survival, traveling, manage a couple of different resources, and manage a couple different resources, and then interesting random events that happen. And I actually the little game that I made in this style as a kid was not something that I put a lot of thought into, but it was actually one of the more fun and addicting games that I made as a kid, just because the uh, the randomness made it really interesting. It was kind of addictive. The listing for Camel in this book mentions that it's a very addictive game, and that's my experience. And that's uh, Oregon Trail was an addicting game. So I've also, while I've been working on my main project, which is this sort of uh, retro space combat game uh, with the sort of bigger 3D art project attached on. I've often been thinking about it'd be fun to have some little projects that are um, like games for other retro computers or different things. And this kind of hit me as a step towards that. So I could implement it in Python. I could quickly implement it in a modern programming language. I can tune it. Then if it's something fun that might lend itself towards being ported to an older platform, we could do that. And I'm going to kind of write it in such a way that I have that in mind. So I think this is going to be a good little project. What I'd like to try to do today is basically just get started. Just get started with it and try to get some sort of like basic input loop. I don't do a lot of programming in Python where you're actually interacting in the console, so just make sure that we can get all that working. Maybe some stuff like text colors in the console for a little bit of flavor. And then also just kind of start building out just a little bit of a design document in the code to set the direction for where this is going. And I'll share my current ideas of the sort of similarities and differences and some different things I want to include in this game. And yeah, so the goal for today will be to just get a start, but to see if we can kind of get a glimpse of what this game will look and feel like. Maybe even get a little sense of that kind of flavor of the random interaction and the game loop, if we're lucky. And then we'll go from there. I'm hoping that we could build the whole thing or get it to a state where it's at least kind of fun to play over the course of a couple of streams, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. So we'll try to kind of try to power through, but also I will also try to explain what I'm doing in Python code for people who are new to programming, might find it useful and might be interested in building something like this themselves. Because the thing about games like this is they're very low on content that you have to create, and just with a little bit of replacing text and tweaking the probabilities of events, you can get something that has a very different flavor. And somebody might like to take this and or kind of use this as a template and try to make their own little survival game. So let's get into it here. I'm going to share my desktop, and we'll bring up PyCharm, and we're going to close out all of the stuff for my other game that we're working on. And I'm just going to make a new increase my brightness here a little bit. I'm going to make a new directory inside my main project folder here, and we'll just call this survival for now, because I don't have a title exactly in mind yet. And this is something else that you know, I need to do a little bit more research about is like, what is the actual name of the genre of this game? Hopefully we'll figure that out at some point. So, and we'll just make a file in here called run, just for simplicity. So we're gonna actually start from scratch here. So we'll go through the whole process of this together. The first thing I always do in Python programs is wrap the actual code in a main function. So we'll do that. And we don't really need any command line arguments or anything like that for now, so we won't worry about that. So all right, so first things first, let's just get a little bit of like user input and output capability working, so we make sure that we have that. I want to do that before we start building out data structures. So I don't actually know right offhand how to print colors to the terminal, so I'm just gonna look that up quick. So it looks like there is some color codes that we can use, and then some color. I'm gonna try to avoid using extra extra modules that we don't need. So let's see if this works. So I think the way that this works is if we print out a starting color, and then I think this is actually just codes that are copied from the Blender build scripts. Oh, here we go. Here it is. Okay, so this is the code that we want. And yeah, I think I kind of want to use cyan mostly, so that is going to be code 36. Let's see here. Okay, so it's like 33 and then okay, and then that's the code for the background. Oh, interesting. So there's like a bold style too. That's interesting. And bright is a style. So 40M is black. Interesting. I've actually never done this before. So let's actually just get rid of this. We'll follow this tutorial first. So we'll do style is 33. We'll do normal and normal cyan And then the background color will be black. And then let's see here. And I want to make sure I can end the style. So they were using NC as just this and the other thing, so that looks like it's just setting setting kind of like an empty style with yeah, let's see if this, yeah, because this would be like 33 and then 0 is like 0M is just see here. I don't know. We'll see if this works. This does what we want it to. So we want to try to yeah, okay, so that does what we want. And that looks like the text style norm or bold. I'm just gonna see what this does. This does anything. Oh yeah, so you can indeed do bold text. We'll just stick with normal text. Let's see here. One for normal. One. Cyan, so they have 0, 36, 47. Interesting. I'm not really sure about how you do the bright colors or not, or if that is even working. But we can also, just for now, just so we're not, I think we can do this and, oops, 0, 36. Let's see here, background code. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, we've got basic basic text color functionality going here, at least for getting something other than our default colors. And I was thinking about sort of wrapping the text output in a function for the purposes of confining output to the size of like a standard like retro computer console. So I might write that up in a little bit after we get some of the other pieces going here. Okay, so yeah, and maybe we actually do that right away. So yeah, let's do that. So we'll just call this cprint and say line, and then what we'll do is we will ljust the line, yeah, left justify out to 40, and then we'll print it with then that, like, whatever we print should give us a nice even yeah. Actually, yeah, and then we can also just disable these two if we don't want to be distracted by the formatting, which I kind of don't want to do. I was hoping I could get nicer, like, colored text, but the PyCharm console isn't playing too nice, and we'll figure that out later. Okay, cool. And we could even like just put a pipe here or something, just so we can see that, kind of see how things are setting on the screen if we wanted to. Not necessary, but for debugging. Okay, so let's think about what we want to have in this game. Some elements of Oregon Trail that we want to include. Okay, so with this kind of game, there's not really any exploration. You have some options sometimes as far as choosing a different path, but generally you're going in a straight line, and then every now and then you run into certain landmarks. So actually, let me just let me tile stuff so we can take some notes while we go. So we need some way of describing, I'll just note this in code. So we need some way of describing a map, so like a linear map with various landmarks. And what I want to do is I want to have this generated by pre-generated by random seed. So there might be different there might be certain random events that happen, but there's going to be like an underlying structure to the map that will pre-generate, and it's not going to be big because I'm kind of imagining this being um, not always like a trip through the same um, map, but you might even take the party out and go into a different map or visit the same map again. Um, yeah, so we have that, and then so like so there's pre-generated landmarks, but then random events too. So like so random events along the way are kind of a separate thing. So the other thing that I like about Oregon Trail is that you have a party that has names, and this was like a constant source of delight as a kid. In Oregon Trail, the party doesn't really have separate jobs. They're just five people with names. But we always imagined they were like the mom and the dad and three kids, like especially two kids and a baby. And it was always funny when like everybody died except the baby, and then you'd raft the baby down the river. In my game, I think without adding a lot of complexity, we can add some roles to the party members. Um, so I'm thinking, I was picturing three party members, and each person has like a name and maybe a race. I forget what the like the politically correct term for race is now, but in my world, there's humans and there's nomads who are like these demons or extraterrestrials, and then I might also allow some other like angelic races here, so like Ophanims. And then in Oregon Trail, you have different resources that you have to replenish. And again, it's kind of like it's just so interesting because there's not a million different resources, but there's just enough to have it be interesting. So like in Oregon Trail, you have food, you have bullets ammo, you have clothes, and you have spare parts for your wagon. So in this game, we're going to be not traveling on a trail, but we're going to be taking spacecraft into this weird sort of like extra dimensional realm that lies beneath space, and then we're going to be sort of exploring it like a dungeon, finding interesting things in there and bringing them back out. So we need so there's going to be a ship that needs to be maintained, and that might be just a different way that you could have this sort of play differently, is like you could choose different kinds of ships that have certain advantages and disadvantages, like speed versus armor, things like that. And then we need to like sustain the party members, so we need like food or supplies, and food or supplies. And then we need something like I think ammo is going to be one of them, because there's going to be basically you're going to be traveling in, trying to get to the end of this place, but along the way you can stop and you can like explore and find things. So then like when you get out of the ship, then you'll need ammo. So maybe ammo, and we'll say so I don't want to do like weapons breaking, but so we'll do like ammo for guns, and then be like ethereal weapons. So the nomads would wield ethereal weapons against ethereal enemies that could sometimes break. So we could do something like, let's say I'm just trying to, like, we could just call it like ethereal blades. And these we can definitely find inside. Ammunition has to be bought. And yeah, so we can find inside the dungeon. Ammunition has to be bought outside. And we could call this provisions. Kind of like, so part of the fun of building a game like this is like you're looking for opportunity to add flavor to something in a simple way. And let's see here. For now, we could just call this, this one, we could just call it spacecraft parts or something. Maybe we can find these inside too if other people have come in here as well. Okay. So, and then something called like artifacts, which is like things that we're searching for. And we can sell. So this place that we're exploring is like a very ancient. Oh, I should have talked about this a little bit. So the setting is like, so we're using magic to open portal into very ancient structure that lies beneath outer space. And extra dimensional beneath outer space. Exploring toward, we'll call it like a key artifact or other goal at the end. But can find other things along the way. So this would be like other artifacts, and we can like sell these to mysterious buyers outside. And I was thinking that it would be cool to have a system where you could basically use an artifact to like escape, like warp out. And you also needed to use them to get back in. So you could actually, like once you had gotten to a certain place inside the dungeon, you could basically set like a waypoint, go back out, buy supplies, and then jump back in to the spot that you came from. I see Timo Burnham is here. Howdy, Timo. Yeah, we're doing a Oregon Trail style game where we're exploring ancient alien ruins. Yeah, and this is kind of how I outline and brainstorm as well. It's a little bit easier here because we don't have to make everything super duper consistent. I'm just kind of thinking about cool ideas that are based off the lore that I have so far. And this is a setting that I'm still developing for my project. So it's kind of good to try to just make something for me, because I'm sort of forced to come up with ideas instead of just spinning my wheels thinking about it. So we can sell artifacts to mysterious buyers outside, and we can also use them to like enter, exit, and like set waypoints. Yep, and that's exactly right, Skunk's Workshop. So it's a good way to find out what variables I need. I'm going to try to keep this really simple. So basically, all of these resources are probably just going to be tracked by a single variable each that stores the quantity. Like, we're not going to distinguish between like different items. The goal here is I'm going to try to write this in a clear, simple way, but I'm also going to try to write it in a way that would be easy to actually port to a retro system. And I think that would be really, really cool thing to do. So we can use this to enter and set waypoints. So something that I'm just thinking of right now that might be interesting here is that you might end up in situations where you have this trade-off between like being able to get out if you're in a dire situation. So like being able to get out and live, return at all, versus like being able to return to where you were. And I think that might be an interesting thing. Like, if you didn't have enough artifacts, you'd risk trying to push on so you could get to basically a waypoint, and that might be an interesting mechanic. Something else I just want to make a note of about is that you might, so with Oregon Trail there were gravestones, and it would be kind of cool in this game if you could come across, like, if you die, if your whole party dies, you could come across them on another run with a different party and take their stuff. Okay. So that could add a lot of flavor and would be a neat mechanic, and I think that would be something that's fairly doable as well, and I think would be possible to implement even on an old system, like implementing this in something like BASIC. So here's our resources. I'm trying to think if we need any more. I'm kind of thinking. Timo says evil playthrough. Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought of like moral choices here, but that could be something to think about, like how a system like that might work. Let me just see here quick. Let's see here. Sorry guys, just 1 second here. Yeah, so I think we can start with these, and then let's just think about some different events. So the main sort of like the game loop is going to be like a travel screen where you're heading in your ship. And it's going to track like the depth in kilometers or something. So like each cycle would be like 1 kilometer or something. And then you would have the opportunity to, you would like optionally could sort of exit your ship. So we could exit ship, and then so like, okay, so maybe you could get like messages that hint at potential things you could find if you exit. If you exit the ship, exit your ship, and then so if you exit your ship, you could like have like a certain set of random events that could happen, like enemy encounters, finding artifacts, finding artifacts or other stuff. So certain kinds of things you would definitely know about without exiting your ship. Like if you came across, you know, the wreck of like a previous expedition. And then yeah, so there's that, and then what else could you do? You could do like the like set a waypoint and potentially exit. And then so this would all be like inside the dungeon. And then outside dungeon, you could like sell artifacts. You could like talk to people, maybe, not sure what that would entail. And then you could enter back in to the dungeon. So okay. And something that I'm thinking about that I think would give a lot of flavor to this without having to, what I don't want is I don't want to have like a whole bunch of different resources that keep like that multiply that I have to come up with different behaviors for. So I'm thinking that sort of a difference that I want to have from this versus Oregon Trail is that your party has levels. So like they have different stats that as they increase, that can increase. So like they can go up or down like sort of permanently, and maybe that might be a way to do it, is like they don't necessarily have like a minimum or maximum, but they just sort of like move in a range. So it's not like your health gets worn down and then there's something that refills your health. It's just like you either survive an encounter or get wounded or heal or something. Um, maybe maybe something that you could do is you could use other like character abilities here. Like that could heal things or like use resources in different ways. But I'm thinking that there should be like a like a physical health, um, ethereal health, and like a sanity. And yeah, so like not necessarily, don't necessarily have a min or max, just those three numbers. So the party should have money too as a stat. And yeah, so then these could be affected by different counters. Like if they get too low, then you start to get messages here. So like or certain events could be triggered, but then you could potentially restore them or do different things. All right. So I think this is a really good start here. And I'm thinking, you know, there are a lot of different, yeah, a lot of different random events and things that I'm imagining that would affect these stats in different ways, and it's fun to think about. So, yeah. Okay, so, and I don't know, this might be overkill, but you could potentially like discover spells or abilities inside the dungeon too, as a way of leveling up the characters. Um, some kind of like, so like maybe some kind of maybe knowledge level that or yeah, like um what would be a better word, like enlightenment or um something that would allow new abilities. So with these four things, party stats, and then like so like yeah, money and and uh and then the ship stats. So obvious one here is the ship has shields that can recharge, and then it's got like a damage that has to be repaired. So I feel like we don't have a ton of things here, but this should be definitely enough that with a half dozen random events, make something that is very flavorful and interesting. So I'm going to actually, let's just take a look at Oregon Trail, the Oregon Trail article once more, and see if there's anything else that we want to get. I know there's like beginning game stuff too, like where you select the players, And I think we're going to do 3 party members rather than 4 or 5. Let's see here. Yeah, I really like this gravestone mechanic in Oregon Trail, so I really like the idea of um I really like the idea of I really like the idea of being able to like take a new party in and recover the recover stuff from the other ship. And I've got one other idea too, which is let's see, just another idea that the way the UI should work is that it won't show like inventory rows for things you don't have any of. And what that will allow is like we could add additional like resource types that are kind of a fun surprise when you discover them. So this is bad, but one that I just realized is that you could potentially, like if you find and this is kind of dark, but like if you find a failed expedition, you could like potentially use the bodies of the previous crew for some ritual purpose or something. So that could actually be that they could actually end up being a resource. All right. So, or like if you encounter certain monsters that have certain that drop certain resources and you don't discover them until later in the dungeon, you know, your UI, it would be a fun discovery. You could show them with different colors and things like that. It's kind of to kind of spice things up later. All right. So I think we have a really nice start here. I'm going to close this and we'll start coding it up. So oops, what I'm going to do here. Oops. Can you tell that I am not familiar with the Mac UI yet? Okay, so all right. Yeah, so let's get started. Now that we have a bunch, like a good starting point here. Let's actually start writing some of this up in code. Now, in like a actual, like say we were to write this in BASIC on the Commodore 64 or something, there's going to be certain capabilities that we don't have. Like, you know, we're not going to necessarily have, well, we're not going to have like structs or things like that where we can sort of keep all of the stats for a certain character together. I'm going to still use those here just because I think it's going to make it easier to manage the state, and it's fairly simple to transform things back that way. So we're going to still use structs. I'm going to we'll see if I can avoid using dictionaries too much. But yeah, we'll use some modern techniques, and probably most of the random events I'll make like a separate function for, just to kind of keep them clear. And we wouldn't have to do that in a retro implementation, but we'll try to keep things we'll try to keep things clear. Okay, so all right, so let's get started. First thing, I'm gonna use this library called adder for making the record types. This is built into, this kind of functionality is built into Python, but I kind of like adder better. So we have a character, and this, character's got physical health, ethereal health. Let's see, we'll just call it physical, ethereal health. This is kind of like their spirit or soul health. Oh, and we want a type. So and sanity, and we'll call it knowledge. 4 stats, that is plenty, I think, and especially since there isn't going to be like a max that can be recharged for each of them. That'll be easy enough to manage. And all of these things are going to be ints, just for simplicity. And we'll end up making constants for the different character types. So okay. And then so spacecraft. Kind of do the same thing for. So we'll have shields, and we'll do the same thing here where, well, I think for shields maybe we want to actually have a maximum, because we don't want to have the shields like recharge up to like keep growing. So we'll have a shields max. We'll call the damage like structure. And is it weird to have max here for the ship but not for the people? I don't think so, because people and characters can change and grow and develop, whereas the spacecraft is kind of fixed in its capability. I don't think that's too big of a leap. We can always change that up later. Okay, so we've got this. So our party is gonna be just a list of characters. And a set of resources which we need to make. and I might have to call it here because I'm hearing my kids, but I think we got a pretty good start here with at least the outline or ideas of where this is going, and we can pick it up later. So let's get these resources in here. So what do we have? Spacecraft, and I'm going to be just verbose with these for now. So we have spacecraft parts, provisions, ammunition, aerial blades. Actually, we could just call this, we can summarize that in the UI as blades. And artifacts, and then we can definitely add more here. I feel like we're starting out here with a very reasonable set of things, and if we can add a half dozen random events, different, and a half dozen different landmark types, we'll be cooking. Okay. Let's clean this up. Okay. And we'll probably do all the work for this game in a single file. I don't think we'll need to break it up. So that'll be kind of another fun aspect of this project. All these need to be adders. Classes. I don't think we need to have a state class that holds everything, but we certainly could, especially as we start tracking more information, and I think that might be kind of a fun part of this project, is kind of like how things can potentially persist. So let's see here. I guess the last thing is the dungeon itself, and we'll just call this the dungeon for now. So I'm thinking that the map will just be like basically a list of like integers that sort of govern like a description or types. You know, different types of events could trigger more on different section types. That's kind of like would take the place of weather in Oregon Trail. So you're seeing different things as you're traveling in. So we'll just maybe just trying to see, like, so these are like just chunks, and this also would determine the overall depth. Kind of chunks of this tunnel that we're traveling into, and then we'll call it landmarks, is like a list of tuple of like So this will be like where the landmark is, and then what type of landmark. So probably, yeah, the next thing would be kind of coming up with some constants that are going to determine these different kinds of things that we can encounter, and starting to flesh them out. The other thing that we can do is start with like the main game loop and the like party creation as well. So I am just going to actually just go and check on my kids quick. If they are not, if they are actually asleep, then I'm going to want to continue with this. And if they are awake, then we'll have to pick it up later. But I will be back in just a second. All right, so we'll pick this up later. But we have, now that we've sketched out some of this, we've got ideas written down. I think the next time is going to be fun because we'll start to list some of the different possibilities of things that can happen. Hopefully get the party creation or main game loop going, and start to enjoy the interesting things that emerge from a system of interesting random events. So thanks for watching. We'll pick this up soon. I'm hoping maybe even later tonight, because I'd kind of like to get to a point where we can see this start actually running. And once we're there, we can take our time with it. But yeah, this is a fun little project. I hope you're enjoying this too. And